more people in his life, and so we're a bit shocked that a lot of those people he's had pretty big arguments with over the years have turned up. But I don't know whether you can hear me outside, unfortunately, the speakers. So if you feel like comfortable enough to come down the aisle a bit, some people outside can come into the little foyer there. No one wants to come in? Come on.
Got a seat down the front.
There's one here. So on behalf of Pete's family, I welcome you today as we gather to remember, give thanks, but most of all, honour the life of Peter James Kinsley, known to most of us simply as Peter or Pete. My name's Peter Fry, and I've been a mate of Pete's for a couple of decades now. He was always going to arrange his funeral, but I don't think he believed this was going to happen. Almost monthly he'd say, "Oh, we'll fix that up next month." But we're all here as a close group of family and friends, and we're here to support each other in our sadness, and especially to Sally, Richard, Jordan and Cara. We extend to you our sincerest thoughts of love, care and concern. And today, although we grieve Pete's death, we must also celebrate his life. And although our grief's strong and we must mourn, don't let that shadow of death hide Pete, who touched us many times in many ways, filling our lives with memories, meaning and love. And today, as memories are shared, it's going to bring back to you the times you've all spent with Pete. And for everyone here, those memories will be very different because of your own unique relationship with Peter. As a brother and brother-in-law of Sally and Richard, an uncle of Jordan and Cara, as a loved member of the Bailey and Nowland families, and as a very good mate and friend to us all. And I've just been asked to give a bit of a brief overview. There's going to be other people speaking about Pete's life as such. So Peter James Kinsley was born in Singleton on the 17th of March 1954 to Wilma and Ronald. And Pete was, I shouldn't say closely, followed by his little sister Sally, but quite a few years later, wasn't it, Sal? Peter attended school in Singleton, and he left home to work as a 17-year-old with the CBC Bank, of which long-time friend Steve Reynolds will talk about shortly. And I think Pete finished with the bank around about 1990. People can argue with me later. Pete would. And then had a brief stint in his own business in Dubbo before spending a good couple of years as a debt collector for the region's electricity provider. In fact, when he was with them, he headhunted a few of the girls that he used to work in the bank with, and some of them are still working for that provider today. And in the late 90s, Pete moved to Woolworra and worked variously with Bartercard, Cypress Lakes Resort as a credit controller and a salesperson for Swift's Outdoor Furniture, who were based in Thornton and had an outlets down on the Central Coast as well. And I first met Pete through his friend David Hood, whose sister Sue was a good friend of mine. And we shared a few drinks during the last couple of months of Hoodie's sister Sue's life, when people used to gather at her home and provide Sue with some comfort and a laugh and talking about the good old days. Pete had a unique gift for talking. He knew something on any subject. I think he thought he was an expert on any subject. But if he didn't, he could just talk plain bullshit. He would offer advice to anyone who wanted to receive it or not. Pete was always well-meaning with his advice, but sometimes he could get a tad harsh or seen as misdirected. Many here have taken his advice, and this has been for their benefit. He was generous to a fault, and over the years his generosity was abused by a few. And if Peter had any real regrets in life, it was his own misplaced trust. I'd also like to mention Pete was a great cook, and his specialty was a good old-fashioned roast, which my partner Kim and I enjoyed with Peter almost fortnightly, I think, Kim. And so every time Kim and I have a roast from now on, we'll fondly remember our regular meals with Pete, and not to mention a good argument or two. And it's now my pleasure to invite cousin Scott to come and speak on behalf of the Bailey family.
Thank you, Peter. Well, hello everyone, and thank you all for being here to celebrate Peter's life. I know there's some people here that have travelled a fair distance, so that's greatly appreciated. As introduced, my name's Scott Bailey. I'm a younger cousin of Peter, and I just want to speak a little bit on behalf of the Bailey family and the extended Bailey clan. Firstly, I just want to convey a big and heartfelt thank you to the staff at the Fresh Hope Community Aged Care Facility at Green Hills who cared for Peter over the past couple of months. Your kind and caring support for Peter, his family and his many visitors was very heartwarming and greatly appreciated. You all do a wonderful and yet difficult job. Peter's relationship with the Bailey family derived from Peter's mother, Wilma, and my father, Trevor, who were siblings. Peter, or better known just as Pete to us, was generally physically distanced from Uncle Trev, my dad, but he still maintained a close relationship. This was just typically some phone banter from time to time, but Pete always kept in touch with his uncle. In my earlier youth years, and unfortunately that was some time ago, I don't recall spending too much time with Pete and his family, probably because I was 8 years his junior. I do, however, remember the Kinsley house in Barton Avenue. I think I got that right, Barton Avenue. It had a pool and I thought that was pretty awesome. My older siblings no doubt have more memories with Pete in those early years. My older brother Neil, for instance, recalled a trip he had with Pete when they were in their late teens, when they both drove an Austin 1800 sedan, which used to be my pop's car, down to the Snowy Mountains on a road trip and sleeping under a tarp beside the car. Neil said it was pretty cold at night, but they had a good time road tripping just the same. And he just informed me earlier that that car had a manual gearbox and 4-speed box, and Pete used to go from first to third. And then going down the hills around the corners, the clutch went in, and that was just how Pop taught him to drive, apparently. Neil also recalled that Pete was a pretty good long-distance swimmer in his early years, and that might surprise a few people, as it did with me. Our Pop Bailey would take him down to the former Singleton's 50-metre swimming pool where Pete would swim lap after lap after lap. Neil was pretty amazed just what distance he could swim with his unusual floppy arm freestyle method. Since the passing of my dad, Pete became more connected with the Bailey families and the Bailey extensions. And following the passing of Pete's mum, our Auntie Wilma, he really took the time to look out for our mum, his Auntie May. Pete would phone our mum regularly to check on her, and whenever he got the opportunity, he would take her out for a meal. So I thank you, Pete, for always looking out for our dear mum. Pete cherished family connections and involvement. It was common to get a regular phone calls from Pete, typically on a fortnightly or so basis, to ask me how my sheep and cattle were going. But if he got the scoop on something happening within the family, you could expect a call as soon as he got the news. Pete had a knack for keeping the family connected through his phone calls. It really saved the rest of us phoning around. We only had to talk with Pete, and we knew in detail what was happening with the rest of the family. I guess he was like the family central database in that respect. And whenever Pete had some fresh news that might be kind of private in nature, he would always start the conversation by saying, "Now this is between you, me and the gatepost." So if you shared private information with Pete, you really knew in advance that it was not going to be so private after all. Seemingly, that gatepost was not so secure after all, and it tended to spread the news pretty quickly around the family. Pete often talked about his niece Cara and his nephew Jordan. When he talked about what they were doing or if he had a visit, I could always hear the joy in his voice. I know he was so proud of them both. Pete liked his models. Oh boy, did he like his models. Mainly cars and train sets, but we've found numerous other collectibles. He had a sideline business going after he retired where he would buy and sell on eBay and Marketplace. He would often tell me about an auction on some models where he won the bid and was on selling them again. Whether or not he really made any money, who knows, but he got enjoyment doing it. Pete would always be looking out for a bargain on eBay, and he often purchased things he didn't need. He just simply gifted them to other people. He also liked real estate and would often convey to others what they should or shouldn't be buying or renting. Another passion Pete had was fishing. Although I never personally fished with Pete, he convinced me he was pretty good at it. Others here who did fish with Pete, probably Paul, and others, no doubt, would have a story to share on that subject. A lot of people might say Pete was quite opinionated, abrupt, and maybe even a touch arrogant at times by the way he expressed his views on matters. But you could also take that as being a strength of character by showing his conviction. He would certainly give you his best advice on matters, just as he saw it, whether you agreed with him or not. But underneath that tough shell Pete portrayed, he was really quite a compassionate and very giving man. And he would be the first to financially assist anyone he thought needed assistance, and there were many. Pete was the kind of person who would give you $100 without question if he thought you needed it, rather than spend $1 on himself. If you went out for a meal with Pete, you could bet he would insist on picking up the tab, and his order was pretty much set in stone. I'll have the crumb cutlets, washed down with a black beer. So just before I wrap up, I want to share a short Irish prayer my daughter Jordana wished to convey to Pete. And it goes like this. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Well, Pete, it won't be the same without your regular phone calls, and when I order my crumb cutlets or have that curry pie at the bakery, I'll no doubt think of you. I'll also miss that smile and your unique laugh. Today I will drink a black beer in your memory, and until we meet again, cuz, I promise I will keep our private conversations just between me, you and that bloody gatepost.
Thanks, Scott. Now I invite Steve Reynolds, former colleague and current friend of Pete's.
Boy, this will be one of the hardest eulogies I've said. And I bet the little shit's sitting up there laughing at my discomfort. But I first met Pete in the CBC Bank in the early 70s. Our paths crossed many times, and Pete wouldn't take or have anything to do with the city. And as a result, after he started at Cessnock, he moved to Tottenham, Galarganbone, Kiama, and then on to the relief staff. I left the bank in 83 and returned home to Dubbo. A few years later, Pete turned up at Dubbo, based there on the relieving staff. And as it turned out, he's got a flat just around the corner from where I was living. And that started many a Saturday night pontoon games with lemonade, of course, me and Pete. He rang me one day and said that he'd bought a house in Dubbo and he got established in it and got his vegetable garden going. And a few months later he rang me and said, there's a good house around the corner from me, you ought to buy it. So I went up and had a look, and sure, it was a good buy and it was a nice house, and I did buy it. And it was just, as I said, around the corner from Pete. And I soon found out why he wanted me to move in. He wanted me to help him make the payments on his house from Saturday night bloody pontoon games. I ended up leaving Dubbo in 97 and moved on to Sydney. And then would often catch up to Pete when I moved back to Dubbo. And he rang me one day and he said, I bought a house at Maitland and I'm moving up to Maitland. And I was, all right. So when he got established, he rang and said, come up for a weekend. So I did, and I came up many weekends. One time there, I bought a new car, a top-of-the-range Astra, which I was pretty proud of. I rang Pete and I said, I'm coming up for the weekend to give the car a run. He said, great. So I pulled into his driveway. He walked out the front and he leant on the veranda post. And I got out of the car and he says, is that the car you bought? And I said, yeah, why? Oh, he said, I thought it was my Auntie May turning into the driveway. After that, he always called that car my little old lady's car. The sarcastic little shit. Anyway, many times coming up, of course, to Maitland. One time there, he wanted to go up to Singleton and check on his rental property. So we went up and he said, let's go to Singleton Bowling Club for lunch. And I said, yeah, fine. So we got there and we parked in the car park and he stayed in the car. And I said, aren't you coming in? He said, my Auntie May has lunch here with her friends. Go in and make sure she's not in there. And I said, why? He said, she doesn't like poker machines and I don't want her to see her playing. After that, every time we went to Singleton, he used to ring Auntie May. I think he was just making sure that she wasn't at the club. Anyway, I don't know what much more I can say about Pete. I remember there we went to Tasmania and the plan was we were going to camp. So I stopped to pick him up. He came out with his sleeping bag and the biggest brown rug I've ever seen in my life. It must have been about 3 buffaloes to make this bloody rug. He threw it in. It took up half the back of the ute and another camp oven and a few other things. And we're on the ferry going across and he said to me, I'm not going to camp. I said, what? He said, no, bugger camping. He said, we'll stay in motels. And I said, why? We've got all the gear. No, I'm not getting up off the ground. So we did. We ended up staying in cabins. We booked 2-bedroom cabins. The first one we got into, one bedroom had a single bed and a set of bunks, and the other one had a double bed. He said, I'm taking the double bed. I said, all right, but I said, I get the next one. Bugger me, if every bloody cabin we booked after that had 2 double beds in it. And anyway, Pete, a lot of people have covered a lot of things that he said, but he used to spend his Christmas with Kevin and Amanda, and I always thought Amanda must be a bloody brave woman, because anybody that served Peter Kinsley up a roast had to be brave, because he considered himself the king of them. So I've gone way off track here with all this, and I'm just holding myself, but I'd just like to say Pete was, without any doubt, a complicated, sarcastic little bastard with a bloody big, generous heart, and I'm going to miss the little shit. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Unfortunately, I was going to invite Cousin Murray to get up and speak now, but his flight was delayed out of Brisbane or Coolangatta maybe. So he's hoping to get to the wake with his wife Janice, and he might be able to share his story with you down there. But it's your own memories of Pete that will keep him alive in your hearts. Our relationship with Pete will continue way beyond his death. And now, to allow us time to reflect upon the impact that Pete's had on our lives, we'll now listen to a song. Just take a little bit of time in your own way to reflect and give thanks for Pete's life. Before we farewell Pete's physical remains, as we must, I encourage you to hold on to your memories of Pete, and he'll never be more than a thought away. While ever we live, Pete will continue to be a part of our lives. And Pete didn't mind hedging his bets, so I invite anyone who wishes to join with me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. I hope it's not too flowery, but I've chosen a little poem. It's called Farewell, My Friends. It was beautiful as long as it lasted, the journey of my life. I have no regrets whatsoever, save the pain I'll leave behind. Those dear hearts who love and care, and the strings pulled at the heart and soul, the strong arms that held me up when my own strength let me down. At every turning of my life, I came across good friends, friends who stood by me, even when the time raced me by. Farewell, farewell, my friends. I smile and bid you goodbye. No, shed no tears, for I need them not. All I need is your smile. If you feel sad, do think of me, for that's what I'll like. When you live in the hearts of those you love, remember then, you never die. And remembering again those who mourn Pete's death the most, Sally and Richard, Jordan and Cara, and all of the Bailey and Nowland clans. May you be granted strength, wisdom and thanksgiving. Strength to bear your loss, wisdom to find meaning and purpose in the design of life, but most of all, thanksgiving for Pete's life that touched, but probably more than touched, that filled our lives and helped create our world. May forgiveness and acceptance lead us to a meaning in which all things are comprehended and hopefully great peace. And may those of you who knew Pete the best and loved him the most be comforted by divine compassion. May Pete's family find comfort in one another. Your sadness gives you an empathy beyond words, an empathy that gives you the strength and the assurance that you're not alone. And find comfort in everyone here who grieves with you. We do want to help and offer an ongoing compassion. Anyway, I think that's enough. Get out before we... I'm sure he'd rather be at the club. On behalf of Pete's family, thank you, everyone. Sorry some of you outside can't hear what we're saying. Your support's appreciated. And we know it is impossible to do justice to Pete's life in a short service like this. So I encourage you to join the family at Beresfield Bowling Club and please continue sharing the story of Pete's life. Our service is now going to conclude with our words of committal, and that'll be followed by a song, and then you're very welcome to follow Sally and Richard and Cara from the chapel. Pete, we thank you and are grateful for all that you have given to so many in your life. The love and commitment to us your extended family. The times that we've shared, laughter, tears and many precious memories. Tenderly, reverently and with love, we commit Peter James Kinsley's body to be cremated and into God's loving care and to be reunited with his beloved parents. May you have eternal peace of spirit, rest from your labours and peace at the last.